If you have the deep determination to succeed, you will not fail. Continue to watch us today. I am Denise Smith and I am your host. We are talking about real estate. Watch me today because we're talking about real estate and purchasing with significant others. Purchasing real estate with significant others is a whole different way of purchasing real estate right now. You know, it takes 2 and 3 people to purchase real estate. You're not able to purchase real estate sometimes by yourself. So sometimes you have to pick that perfect person to buy real estate with. So if you're interested in purchasing real estate today, we want you to watch and listen because there's some things that you're going to need to be aware of if you're wanting to buy real estate. Now, we have a couple of stories that I'd like to tell you in regards to real estate. But before I do, I'd like to just ask you to grab a pen and write down the things that if you would like to purchase real estate, write these few things down that you're going to need to put together if you're interested in purchasing real estate. The first thing that you're going to want to put together is that you're going to want to put together a copy of your paycheck stubs. Write that down. A copy of your paycheck stubs for 30 days of earning wages, 30 days of paycheck stubs. If you have 2 and 3 jobs, then you're going to have to get 2 and 3 copies of your paycheck stubs to show for a full 30 days. Also, you should put together your bank statements. You should put together bank statements for 3 months. Bank statements will help you to identify that you have your down payment. The bank always wants to know whether or not you have your down payment. So 3 months of bank statements will show that, and that will be able to verify that you have the sufficient funds to close the transaction. The third thing you need to put together is W-2s for 2 years. Put together the W-2s so that you can go ahead and show the bank or whoever that's going to approve your loan that you have been working for at least 2 years and that 2 years that you could verify income. So W-2s for 2 years will verify that you've been on your job for at least 2 years. If you haven't been on your job for 2 years, then you just have the verification that you've been in the same line of work for 2 years. It doesn't matter that you've changed several jobs in the last 2 years. You just want to be in the same line of work. So I'm going to review those things once again. You need copies of your paycheck stubs, 3 months bank statements, and 2 years of W-2s. If you need to, you also would want to put together your tax returns for 2 years. You see, if you're self-employed, you're going to need to verify your income with tax returns. Now, I'd like to talk to you about purchasing property with significant others. I always tell people to be real careful who you choose to purchase real estate with. You see, there's a couple of stories that I have for you that maybe I think might be able to help you, and I hope that they will. The first story is that when I met a young lady that was purchasing 25 years ago, she was purchasing with her fiance. And when she decided to purchase property with her fiance, what happened is that he said that he wasn't going to marry her unless she purchased this property with him. So I told her, well, if they weren't married as of yet, then maybe she should just buy the property by herself, and then she could later on, when they get married, he could go on title. Well, they did finally get married, but she never put him on title. They had 3 kids, and 25 years later, he was the house husband, and he never had a job. So ultimately, after 25 years later, unfortunately, they had to go through the D word, the divorce. And when they went through the divorce, he wanted half the property because, you see, we live in a 50-50 state, community state that if you purchase property when you're married, that they will own 50%. They, the significant other, or the spouse. Generally, it's the spouse, because when you're married, they can own 50% of that real estate. So this is what happened. He never did put his name on title to the property, but they did get married. They had 3 kids, and when they divorced, he tried to get 50% of the property. But because he didn't own it, and because she bought it as her sole and separate property when they originally got married, he was not able to take title to that property. But what she did have to do is pay alimony, because he didn't work and she had 3 kids. So when you're purchasing real estate, you want to be aware of the significant other and when you purchase your real estate. So if you're not married and you're purchasing real estate, then you want to buy that property by yourself as your sole and separate property. And then that way, you know that no one could affect that real estate. No one could take your property. No one could try to get interest in your property, if as long as you buy it before you get married. Buyer beware. Buyer beware. Be really, really careful about that. We have another story for you. The next story goes like this. The significant other. There was a person that purchased property, and when they purchased the property, they purchased it by themselves. They didn't even have the significant other at the time. They just purchased it by themselves. What happened to them is that they started dating someone that had 5 kids. And when they started dating this person that had 5 kids, ultimately what happened is that the mother of the children, when they found out that they were dating another young lady, she said, well, then you may take those kids. So she gave him all 5 kids. And so then he moved into the lady's house, the one that she already owned, moved into the property with the 5 kids. It was a sad situation, because one night he stayed out all night. She ended up taking care of the 5 kids. When he got home, she was so upset that she threw a phone at him. And when she threw a phone at him, he called the police. And when he called the police, what happened is something very sad. He called the police, and when the police got there, the police made her leave her house, because he said that he was hurt when she threw the phone at him. So he then received a restraining order. And so what happened? When she received the restraining order, that she could never, ever come near him, the kids, or guess what? Her house that she owned, that she had interest in, she could not go back to that house for 6 months. So what I say to ladies and men, buyer beware. Beware of who you put in your home. Beware of who you purchase your home with. And just beware, because sometimes when you own real estate, people can take advantage of you. And if they own real estate and the other significant other does not own real estate, sometimes they might have a position where they can take advantage of you. So you want to be very, very careful, not of course, who you let in your home, but most of all, when you let them in your home, if they pay one mortgage to that house, they might say that they have interest in that house. So you want to be careful with moving people in your home and determining what they actually pay in that home. Buyer beware. Be careful. You see, because if they pay any expenses, not only the mortgage, but if they pay property taxes, fire insurance, if they pay some of the PG&E, the water, the garbage, if they pay any part of expenses on that home, if you all separate at a later date, they can come back and they could say that they have interest in that home. So this segment today is talking about buying property with significant others. So when your significant other is that person that you married or someone that you just moved in with, be careful. You see, real estate is such a complicated thing that when you purchase real estate, that belongs to you, no one else. So you want to make sure, even when you meet someone and you decide that you want to commingle your stuff, you want to be careful. And the reason is because you want to get a prenuptial. You want to make sure that you get an agreement before anybody even mingles together stuff. You want to get a prenuptial, something that says if it's a marriage agreement or just an agreement to live together. You see, because things are always good in the beginning, but you will never know anyone until you live with them. You know, I love real estate and I love investing in real estate, but I've never ever invested in real estate with anyone before. You see, because my grandmother always told me that you cannot commingle your debts or your credit or your property with anyone. So I've never lived with anyone, and I've never ever been married. So when you're married, you can commingle your stuff, but when you're not married, I've never bought property with anyone, ever. And I would recommend to anyone to use my grandma's advice. Do not commingle your debts with anyone until you're married. And even after you're married, you want to have a very good agreement that when you're commingling your debts and your income and all the stuff that you're commingling, you want to make sure that you have everything in writing so that there's no misunderstandings. You see, real estate is a wonderful thing to invest in. It's a wonderful thing to invest in. But I'll tell you what, if you decide that you want to buy with someone, then you want to make sure that they have good credit also. So if you're the only one that has good credit and they do not, then buyer beware, buyer beware. That is a zone that you need to be careful. Be very, very careful. You see, because sometimes people can see you as the deep pockets because you have good credit. And if they don't have it, there is something in church that's called evenly yoked. And it's really important that you're evenly yoked. You got to be even with your debts. You may not make the same income, and that's okay. But you want to make sure that when you're purchasing real estate with another party, you want to make sure and be very cautious who you make that investment with. It's the same thing as getting married. It's the same thing when you have a significant other. And now the laws have changed a little bit because now we have same-sex marriages now. So that's why we call them significant others, because that just might be your partner. It might be your significant other. But it's really important that you get all of your details up front as to what their credit looks like and what their income is, because guess what? If you're commingling your debts and your income, then those are the things you need to know. And if they don't want to tell you, then maybe they aren't the person that you want to buy real estate with. You want to be careful and not get yourself caught up with a situation that is very, very alarming. I have one more story for you. This is my third story. The third story comes to you in a scenario like this one. A man and woman decided that they were going to get married. The first year was kind of rocky. Second year was kind of rocky. Third year was rockier. But what happened is that the mate just totally ignored the rockiness. You know, love is blind sometimes, and we know that. But we also know that at times that you really got to know and put the hat on that maybe he's not in love. Maybe you need to put the hat on that's the wiser of the two. Because sometimes you do things when you're in love that you don't do things when you don't, when maybe you may make sacrifices, or maybe you'll make concessions, or maybe you'll even make compromises. Or even you might even think that that person is going to change their ways. Well, here's the scenario. Third year was rockier. Fourth year, rockier. Fifth year, this is what she finds out. The gentleman that she's going to marry has a drinking problem. And with the gentleman that's, she marries, she decides that she no longer wants to be married. So she never gets married. That's the good thing. She didn't get married, but ultimately she inherited her grandmother's home. She inherited her grandmother's home. It was a family, a legacy home, where grandchildren lived in this home and families lived in the home. And when they moved out of state and they came to live in California, families moved into this home and they all lived there. And it was really a wonderful time. Well, this young lady moved the gentleman into her home. And that was actually the mistake number one. Because you see, when she was having a rocky time being engaged, she totally ignored the signs of maybe she should not be getting married. So she fortunately didn't marry him, but what happened is that they got into a big fight while he was intoxicated. And this gentleman was the kind of gentleman that could, when he was intoxicated, when police or anybody of official would come to speak to him, he would speak just as clear. You would not even think that he had a drinking problem. He, matter of fact, cleaned up so well that it was hard for her to believe he had a drinking problem. If she wasn't with him as many years as she was, did she realize what the situation was. They got into a big fight and a big argument one day. She called the police. When she called the police came. And when the police came, he spoke so well, he told them that she was beating up on him. Well, he had bruises all over his body, and the reason why the bruises were there was because he would fall down and things would occur. So ultimately, what happened? What happened is that when the police officer came to the house, it was something like the same situation I told you before. Well, it was unfortunate, you see, because the officers felt like she did something wrong, so then they took her to jail because they thought she was doing something wrong. It was really unfortunate because, you see, again, he got a restraining order on her where she couldn't come to her home. And that was really sad. So I say to you, buyer beware, purchasers beware, man, woman, child, beware. You see, because when you own real estate, when you have real estate, if anybody gets into an accident into that house, like say, for example, somebody gets into a car accident, and if they get into a car accident, you could get sued and they could try to attach the home. So you want to be real careful when you own real estate. Buyer beware. And of course, you don't want to move anyone into your home until you're absolutely, positively sure that that is going to be the one that's going to be your life partner. Now, we know that people change, and we know that things happen sometimes that doesn't feel good, but you know, I think it's really important that you're really cautious and real careful when you're purchasing real estate with your significant other. Real estate is a wonderful thing to secure your financial future, and it's a wonderful thing to do. But buyer beware. You got to know that when you're buying property in California, it is a 50-50 community state. So as soon as you buy the property, unless you sign off on that property. Sometimes people will ask you to sign off on it. Sign off means that they'll sign a grant deed or a quitclaim deed relinquishing their interest in that property. And if they do that, then you're safe. It's okay. No problem. But if you move that person into your home, and like I said before, if that person pays any expenses to that home, water, gas, anything, PG&E, mortgage, taxes, insurance, anything that's going to cause that property, anything that's going to keep that property going for you to own it. So sometimes people want to get help from people, and that's okay to get help. But when you get help, you want everything in writing, so you know that this help that you're providing means that you have absolutely no interest in this property. You want to make sure, and sometimes it's good to get legal advice. A lot of times we don't want to get legal advice. because it costs money to get legal advice. Sometimes the attorneys can cost $200, $300 an hour. And a lot of people say, oh no, that's too expensive for me to pay. But I always tell people, for me, I'm a licensed real estate broker. I own Royal Realtors and Loan Services. I've written a book. It's called From Rags to Real Estate. And From Rags to Real Estate is my life. It's my life about selling real estate, but not only selling in real estate, but how I got into the business when I was 14 years old. Real estate really has been my life. You know, California Association of Realtors came out with the slogan, real estate is my life. Well, that has been my slogan all my life. Real estate is something that I started investing in when I was 18 years old, and I never stopped. I continue to invest in real estate. But really important for everyone to know that real estate is a blessing to purchase, but you never want to purchase beyond your means. You see, because when times get hard and trials and tribulations come into your life, sometimes it gets a little rocky. You might lose your job. You might lose a family member. Something tragic might happen to where you cannot purchase and you can no longer pay that mortgage on that house. So that's why you always want to buy a house and buy within your means. If you don't, what'll happen is you will find yourself buying a property that you cannot afford. And before you know it, the banks, there's a possibility that the banks, I hate the F word, I hate it, but when 1 million people got foreclosed on in '08, and they're saying that another million are in the hopper to get foreclosed on, foreclosure is real. So we have to be real honest about that F word. That if you're buying beyond your means and you're not, that you feel you can't afford it, well then buy another property a little less. That's really important. Buy a property that's a little less money. You don't have to buy the most. They always say that the best house to buy is the lowest house in the best location. So you can get the most inexpensive home in the best location. So drive around, look at the location that you wish to live in. If you decide that you want to live in a certain location, well then really map it out, research it. Find a real estate broker that you want to work with. Interview real estate agents, real estate brokers. Interview them. Find out who you really wish to work with. You see, the difference between an agent and a broker is a real estate broker is a broker that can own their own company and they can open up their own company. A real estate agent works under a broker. Now, sometimes there's brokers that work for other companies because they do not want the expenses of having a brokerage. That's the choice. So you might find a real estate broker that just works for another company. But if they're a broker, they might own their own company. A real estate agent, I would always ask, how long have you been in the business? That's a key question. You see, because you want an experienced agent that has worked with people, working with all types of people, all types of locations. That's really important. You see, because if you're wanting to purchase real estate and you purchase within your means, you'll be able to hold on to that real estate and have it for a period of time, and you'll be very happy. You see, when people purchase within their means, they're not stressed, they're okay. So now I also understand why my grandmother told me to save for a rainy day. You always got to put money away for a rainy day. So if you purchase real estate and you want to buy maybe in the next 6 months to a year, then I highly encourage you to put money away so that you can have at least 6 months. 6 months is what you need to have for a actual monies in the bank, so you can make sure and have that for a rainy day. Now, we've talked about 3 real estate stories, and I want to talk about a good real estate story because what I like to do is be honest about real estate. Real estate is something good to do, and it's wonderful to have, and I want to talk about some good times in purchasing real estate. I've sold real estate, hundreds and hundreds of properties. I've been blessed. I've purchased also quite a bit of properties as well. And what I found is that when you buy property, you want to make sure and get your inspections on that property, because when you get your inspections on that property, you can make sure that anything wrong with it, you could plan. Like if it's something that needs to be done, you could plan properly of 3 months, 6 months. You could have a year plan of things that you're going to do to that property. So I would highly encourage you to not only to purchase, but definitely get your inspections on that property. And then whoever you decide that you want to buy with, whoever it is, you want to make sure that they have good credit like you do. And make sure that if there's anything with their job, how long they've been on their jobs, this is really important to find those things out. But I have a very good story. I have a family that bought when they were very young. They started out buying when they were 21 years old. And at 21, they were very young. The mother called me up and said to me, you must not know that my children cannot purchase real estate. Why are you trying to work with them to purchase real estate? They cannot afford it. That is what the mother said. So I said, okay. I then started working with the young people. They were 21. By the time they turned 22, they had saved enough money to buy. Their credit was good. They put everything in line to purchase real estate. They got married. They purchased their first piece of real estate. And then from there, they lived in their home for 7 years. They sold that house in 7 years. They moved out of California and they bought in Mississippi. But the thing is that they bought this when they were 21. They bought it for $150,000. By the time 7 years went by, they were 22 years old when they bought. It took them 21 to 22 to get their things together. They bought when they were 22 years old. They lived in the property for 7 years. They built enough equity to where they sold that property, and they actually sold the property for $450,000. So what they did is they got married and they took their money to Mississippi, and they bought in Mississippi, and they were able to buy a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home for $200,000, and they cashed it out completely, never had a mortgage payment. To this day, they don't have a mortgage payment, and they have 4 children, 4 beautiful children, and they really did well for themselves. So there's always good things that you can do as well in purchasing real estate. That was a good story. I know that there's a lot of people that want to purchase real estate today. If you're interested in purchasing real estate, call the number on your screen, give me a call, and if you just have questions that you'd like me to answer on this show, please email me and ask the questions, and I will take care of it. I'll leave you with this. If you have the deep determination to succeed, you will not fail. Continue to dare to dream. With Denise Smith.